Hi guys, I'm glad you're here. Thank you very much for joining me. Evidently, a fire broke out at the uranium processing plant there in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. This is the Y-12 nuclear facility. They produce uranium for the Navy and different vessels. The building that was on fire, I don't know if it's still on fire, they say they have it contained, is this one right here, building 9212. Over 200 employees work at the site. The National Nuclear Security Advisor, Steve Wyatt, said that there was no threat of nuclear radiation to the outside community, that everything was contained here. There's no word on injuries to the employees there. There's no word if any are missing. The fire evidently started at 9:15 a.m. One of the spokespersons there, as of 1 p.m. local time, said normal operating procedures had resumed in other areas of Y-12, but not there at 9212 building. At 12 o'clock, the National Nuclear Security Administration spokesperson, Stephen Wyatt, said continuous air monitors in the area have not alerted officials to any release of radioactivity. You would think they'd be going around with handheld monitors and taking air quality samples, but there's nothing about handheld monitors and what they're reporting. The fire evidently started in what's called a handling hood. If any of you know what that could be, let me know. Building 9212 is listed on the Department of Energy website as a uranium processing building built in 1945. The building serves as one of the primary chemical processing and enrichment uranium production facilities at Y-12. The website states. It also states that the building is set to be replaced by the end of 2025. Officials also confirmed that the material involved in the fire was a compound of uranium. The element workers in building 2212 handle. The specific compound involved in the fire was in metal form. As of 1 p.m. local time, they still have not confirmed if the fire was out. I did find a safety memo that was dated from the 20th during a critical safety inspection. It said resident inspector and NPO critical safety engineer conducted a walk down of building 212 casting wing. The resident inspectors observed CNS respond to two separate critically safety issues during the walkdown. The first issue was rainwater intrusion that had pooled on the floor and flowed under the casting line equipment. CNS elected to maintain the operation out of service and allow the water to evaporate based on the rapid rate of evaporation due to the airflow through the location. The second issue involved casting stack assemblies that tipped over as they were traveling along a conveyor belt inside the glove box after they had been removed from the casting furnace. The assemblies contacted a partially open glove box gate at the exit of the east casting line cooling tunnel. One assembly completely tipped over and came to rest on its side. The second assembly in the line tipped over and came to rest leaning against the side of the glove box. I guess that happened during their walkthrough of the facility. CNS operators were able to stop the conveyor belt in time to prevent a third assembly from being impacted. CNS established a NCS administrative boundary and consulted the critically safety evaluation to verify that this was a analyzed upset condition. NCS personnel provided written guidance for operators to pick up the cuticle and mold housing to reassemble the casting stack assembly. Operators used the dry-vac system to clean up material that had spilled when the components were knocked off the casting stack. And then it talks about a recycling valve, I believe it's called. CNS concerning the preconditioning of the isolation valve. Unacceptable preconditioning is an activity performed prior to or during an in-service test which alters one or more of the measurable parameters such as that it results in the acceptable test results. The surveillance test was written in a sequence such that the isolation valve was cycled prior to a timed closing test. The facility inspector then raised the concern to the CNS system and process engineers and questioned why the procedure was sequenced in that order. I'll give you a link down below for these different documents. The next one is January 13th. They have another one January 6th, December 30th, and December 23rd. January 13th. CNS restored water pressure to a fire suppression system that had been isolated due to a freeze event. And you can look at the report from 12/30 of last year. Shortly after restoring the system, lab personnel who were inspecting the system for leaks discovered a sprinkler head in the ceiling had activated. This resulted in water rapidly entering the vault area where uranium samples are stored, flooding some sample carts and wetting items throughout the room. The area was immediately evacuated, the fire suppression system isolated, and an administrative boundary was established per CNS's abnormal condition involving fissile material procedure. CNS declared an occurrence for a loss of one or more of the nuclear criticality documented in controls, such as that an accidental criticality is possible from the loss of one additional documented control. As a result of the floodwater, most of the room, including the large geometry exclusion area buffer area, had standing water up to 1 inch deep. A cart containing dozens of small uranium sample bottles was filled with water, resulting in fully submerged and floating uranium sample bottles. Boy, they got some problems going on there, don't they? Another cart, also loaded with small sample bottles, was directly edge to edge with the flooded cart, violating spacing requirements established in the criticality safety evaluation. In addition, the cart's work surface and the exterior of the sample bottles appeared to be wet. Multiple plastic bags containing contaminated material were also sitting on the floor in the flood water. Details about the event were documented, including a 5-minute delay in the isolation of the water supply to the sprinklers. The fire department representative brought this up as a concern due to the operations center directing them to wait for the shift manager to arrive and authorize the isolation of the system. The fire department had completed a walk down of the facility to verify there was no fire. The resident inspectors questioned why the fire department was required to wait to isolate a system that was flooding building 2 if it was verified that there was no fire, and if this was an expectation of operation management. As a result, CNS added an additional action to evaluate the requirements for isolation of wet pipe systems by the fire department. Yeah, it's an older building built in 1945. Did the fire suppression pipes, were they frozen again? I don't know. I know it's been cold there. Not as cold as where I am at, but Yeah, okay, over here, let's see, we got homes to the north, we got more facility, what is that, University of Tennessee, Audubon. There's a park and more homes there. Yeah, I would be getting my Geiger counter out. So what are your thoughts? Put your comments down below. If you have any more information, please put that down below. Make sure you're still subscribed. Please thumbs up my videos, and I'll talk to you later. God bless you. Bye.